I'm a school leader. Folks that's been listening probably are familiar. Like I went back into the schools, and so I'm a principal again, charter high school in Phoenix, and I'm looking to possibly get a little bit more STEM emphasis at our schools. And I'm glad to be having this conversation with you because that is kind of where I would like to kind of get some ideas. And I'm just curious on your end, why do you think that, or why would you support the idea of creating more of a STEM focus area within high schools or just in schools in general?
Well, that is such a great question, Sheldon. One of the reasons that we support STEM education and quality STEM education in schools is because if you look at the United States and in fact the globe, we have a deficit in STEM trained professionals today in our workforce. Yet technology, science, engineering, and math are only exploding across the workforce. And since the pandemic, and in some cases before the pandemic, our kids are not meeting some of the basic qualifications and standards for math and science. So it is critically important that we upskill our kids. And the way that we believe we need to do that is by helping to upskill our educators. So if you're a school leader looking to create a STEM culture, one of the first things that I would recommend is invest in quality STEM professional development for your educators. As most of your audience probably knows, most educators come to the classroom through a literacy lens, right? So, and we're experiencing a teacher shortage right now. So you may take that extra English teacher and ask them to teach math, or take that extra English teacher and ask them to teach biology, but they haven't been adequately trained in that particular discipline. So the content and pedagogy is missing for them. That is one of the first places that we want school leaders to think about starting, is find a quality STEM professional development organization that gives your teachers that hands-on experience. And what we do is we also give them experience as both the student and the teacher, help them to be solid in that content, and then teach them that pedagogy so that they can feel confident in that classroom. Because as you all know, as leaders, they're dealing with much more than just content and pedagogy in the classroom. So if I'm confident in that, that is a great way for me to then have to deal with some of the other things that I have to deal with in the classroom. The other thing that we help educators to do within districts and schools is look across their school system to understand where there are areas that they can increase access. So in one instance, when we were working with a school in Pennsylvania, because we always go in with an assessment, and we work with the district leaders or the school leaders to do an assessment. If it's a high school, we take a look at where are all your STEM classes, where are your AP classes, who has access to those. And in one school in Pennsylvania, what we found is every single AP STEM related class was scheduled directly across from all of the athletic training for their athletes. So that meant none of those athletes could then participate in an AP class or in fact a STEM class. So we worked with them to change that system, because you're making those students choose, right, between this quality STEM and their STEM identity and their athletic identity. And we believe that students can do both, right? So those are the types of things that we do at the National Math and Science Initiative. And those are the types of things that we recommend as we come in and work with districts and schools.
I love this conversation, and it's got me thinking because, so I'm a history teacher. You know, that was my background. That's where I was at. And I love what you're saying, but I'm one of those people that like stayed away from science, technology, engineering, and definitely stayed away from mathematics. So if we're talking about changing the culture into a STEM culture, and I heard you mention like some of the literary side of things. So like my ELA folks, my history folks, how do we get them to maybe open to the idea of embedding STEM within their curriculum?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And we do also work across the disciplines to ensure that if you are that ELA teacher, that there are some ties with what you are teaching that go to math and science. So one example that I can think of in our most recent training, which was so exciting for us because the board of our organization was there, we had an ELA teacher who was doing a class with a group of educators, and it was on Henrietta Lacks. And if you don't know who Henrietta Lacks is, for those of your audience, she was a woman whose cells, cancer cells, were really some of the cells that have helped advance cancer treatments for everyone in the country, right? And her cells were taken from her without her knowledge. It's a whole story. Look up Henrietta Lacks. But we had the ELE teacher teaching that course in English language to our educators in the program. And they can take that particular story and apply it to biology, right? There's a big tie. So how do you work together in ways that through vertical teaming, right? So if you're teaching that in the 9th grade, how do then you work with your biology teacher to incorporate a Henrietta Lacks story in biology, and then also utilize that? What do the kids have to know in 10th grade? Is there any relevancy to the Henrietta Lacks story and what you're teaching in biology to the standards that kids have to know in the 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade? So that's the kind of work that we do with schools, is to say, all right, you may not see this tie, but let us help you bring this particular history lesson and English language arts lesson into the STEM realm.
I can hear project-based learning within all of this. I can hear a lot of different strategies for just collaboration amongst disciplines. So like when you're doing your PLCs, for example, and having your math and English and everyone all in the same place and say, okay, here's the unit that we're going to pursue. And, we're going to talk about Henrietta. And so this is what the science side is going to do. The math side is going to do. I think all of that can make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And it's a great way to bring the teachers together with other classroom teachers who are the coaches who implement our programs to kind of formulate that in a 3 or 4 day professional development training that's geared right for your school or district.
Okay. Now, this sounds all great. Rainbows and flowers and everything, but I know there's going to be some teachers that are going to resist this. So you know what? I am not a STEM teacher. And so why are you making us sit through this PD? I don't want what type of, again, I'm thinking from a school leader's lens, right? Yeah. Let's just say, again, this sounds great, Nicole, but let's just say that there are some folks that are resistant and say, this is not what I went to school for. I want to just teach history. I just want to teach English. I just want to teach PE. So what are some ways to combat some of the resistance or I guess, how do we show the benefits of doing this, or maybe just some ways to kind of get around any type of pushback we might get?
Right. So in terms of this type of training, there's a couple ways that we approach it. We do work directly with districts and schools. And in that instance, we know that principals like yourself will be telling the teachers what to do. So I think a couple differentiators from our trainings are, number one, it is not just a sit and get. You are not just going to be listening to Charlie Brown's teacher, right, tell you about biology or math or chemistry. You're actually going to be hands-on with the very lessons that you are going to be teaching. You're going to have an understanding of not only what the content is, but how to most effectively put that pedagogy in place. And you're going to do it. You're going to stand up in front of the classroom and you're going to be the teacher. And then you're going to switch roles with some of your fellow teachers and you're going to be the student. You're going to understand where they need to struggle with a particular set of instructions, where that critical reasoning comes in. I keep thinking about a training that we did in Atlanta called New Teacher Academy. And we do have trainings a segment of our training that can be for very new teachers, where one of our coaches had the entire class of her teachers out in the hallway. And they were doing a measurement exercise. And every one of those teachers was doing the exercise alongside one another. And so it's more hands-on. So that's one differentiator. I think the other thing is the fact that we have those coaches year-round. So you don't have to leave our in-person training content workshop and feel like you don't have support. We have coaches that stay with your teachers during the school year for just-in-time training, just-in-time problem solving. And they are teachers in the classroom. So it's not like you're calling somebody who's been out of the classroom for 12 years and they're not really familiar with what's going on. All of our coaches are experts because they're currently in the classroom. So you have that support, you have that community. And there are several schools that we work with where we might have a biology teacher who's the only biology teacher in his or her building. And it's so critical to have that community. The other thing that we provide are supports for teachers. So there are lessons that you can pull from. There are materials that you can pull from. All of those kinds of things are available in addition to your coach. So I think that's a big differentiator. The other thing for district administrators to think about if you're wanting to build a STEM culture is the idea of building a train the trainer system. And we're doing that now in the state of Louisiana, where we started with 35 teachers. Those teachers were trained on how to go back to their districts and schools and be that resource as a STEM educator professional. And then they will take that to their colleagues and they will help to build that STEM culture within their schools. And we're actually expanding that work in Louisiana. So lots of different ways to do it with your individual school or within your district or within your state, like we're doing within the state of Louisiana.